Man, oh man. Mm. My apologies for yesterday. I got yanked. I got caught up. And my apologies for starting a couple of seconds late. Today I had a mic problem. My bad. But anyway, y'all don't want to hear about that. Oh man. Let's have a conversation. Let's just talk. I don't. All right, let's go. First things first. Welcome to CNN. I am your host, Kurt Kennedy, the underdog. Let's go in. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. All right. Let me make sure I say this. I got to say this because of how idolatrous politics has become in our culture. Whenever you make commentary politically, people put you in a box and say, oh, you believe this. So let me say this as a disclaimer on the front end. I am not political at all. I don't trust any party at all. I've never voted Democrat in my life. I don't trust Republicans, definitely not Trump and MAGA and all of it. I just think I get that we live in a country where we have the right to exercise our vote, but part of our rights is to choose not to vote, and I'll just submit to whatever happens and try to trust the Lord in the midst of it, and that's what I've done. I have no political dog in this fight, but I am a believer and I speak truth, at least I try to, and I make perspectives on what I think is happening that is truth. With that being said, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And you have to be. But let me frame it in such a way. All right, unless you've been dead for some time, everyone has seen some variation of this photo floating online and the outrage accompanied with it. So I don't know why this one is very small, but everyone, for the most part, has seen this photo. This is a photo of Donald Trump putting his hands on top of a man who looks like Jeffrey Epstein, to be honest. And he has the robe, the red robe and all this stuff, the yellow orb in his hand. In the back, you can see what looks like a demonic, potentially demonic angel in the back, in the middle of this thing. You got eagles, war, all of it, right? Liberty, all of this, right? So what happened was, as this came out, it was released, a lot of Christians, particularly those on the conservative, the MAGA Republicans that are Christians, were really outraged. All right. Now keep in mind that picture I just showed you was posted, which Donald Trump admitted to posting that photo on his True Social account. There's a different conversation about why is our president posting crazy content on social media as an 80-year-old man about to be 80 years old. What are we doing right now? What are we doing? I don't remember sleepy Joe Biden being this active on social media, right? Even having someone else do it, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I didn't listen to much of what they tweeted and said anyway. So Donald Trump acknowledged that he did this. He said that he doesn't know where. He said that fake news came up with that. He said he wasn't depicting himself as Jesus, but as a doctor. From where? India? Like, what doctors wear robes like that? I mean, most of the pictures you see online are Jesus in a white robe with the red sashes over him. What doctors have like orbs, orange orbs coming out of your hands? Like, what are you like? The doctor that's on Street Fighter that has like stuff coming out of his hand, like Ken and Ryu, right? It looks like Ken's dad with stuff coming out of his hand. What you know? So there's just this. This is what he said, and people are outraged. I mean, Megyn Kelly, I saw today, basically said MAGA is dead. MAGA is dead. I've watched many people who support Trump, who supported Trump. On Facebook, I'm watching people who are conservative, Christians, some MAGA, some just conservatives, that are lamenting the things that he's saying and doing. On Easter Sunday, he tweeted some serious vulgarities towards Iran, threatening to basically end the civilization. He didn't say how, but we get the picture via nuclear war, right? So all this is happening. Everyone's flipping out. And my question is, are you seeing what I'm seeing? All right, so I'm not going to belabor the point anymore. I'm going to give you 4 things that I'm seeing. You don't have to agree. I understand. You can support him and love what he's doing and defend him and think he's a believer. I have a right to my own opinion and perspective on these things, and I share that on my channel. If you disagree, you are happy to do so. But I'm not going to go back and forth with you in the comment section. My thumbs are tired. If you make your own video and say what you want, all right? Let me give you 4 observations that I make when I look at all of this. As a believer, as a pastor, this is how I think about these things. The first is that Trump is really telling you what he really thinks about it. And let me say what I mean. Have you wondered, like, why would Trump post himself as Jesus of all people? Like, why would he do that? No, we don't know why. He won't admit to even saying that he was posting himself as Jesus. But why would he choose Jesus of all people? Like, why would he think that presenting himself as Jesus, the doctor, would be okay with the vast majority of Christians that have voted for him, that really loved Jesus, but voted for him because their consciences won't let them vote across the aisle to be Democrat, right? Well, why would he do that? Like, why would he choose that image of all, knowing that? Well, keep in mind that the day before Trump posted that image, he went at the Pope. The Pope made a declaration about peace and that Jesus loves peace. And Trump went after the Pope, first American Pope, went after the Pope and said that, stay out of politics. I'm paraphrasing. Stay out of politics and deal with religion and all that stuff, right? That you're weak on crime and all this stuff. Just typical stuff, right? So I'm thinking, like, why would Trump do this? Why would he post this, knowing, at least assuming that people would think a certain way? Let me give you an illustration from the Bible. I'm not going to pull the passage up, but in Job chapter 1, God and Satan are in this conversation. They're having a conversation. And God says, what about my servant Job? Have you tried my servant Job? And Satan says, God said, there's no one like him in all the earth. And Satan says to him, of course there isn't, because you protect him. You give him all this stuff. Like, if you take away some of those things, then he won't serve you anymore. He won't worship you, right? And then the second time, it was like, well, a skin for skin. If you affect his health, he won't worship you. Now, there are many different ways. You've probably heard that sermon taught or that passage taught and explained and what it means and all these different things and how it points. Let me just make an observation that this is not what I think the passage is about at all, right? But it's an observation. This is observational theology. This isn't exegetical theology. Observational theology. Have you noticed that when he says it's about Job, it's because you protect him, he's not just talking about Job. In the context of the Bible, he is. But Satan is telling you what he really thinks, telling God what he thinks about humanity. Humanity only worships you, or the ones that do, are because you protect them, because you bless them. You take away any of that. So he's basically saying that the people who believe in you, they're shallow in their faith. Their faith is only as deep as your protection of them. You take that stuff away, it's a wrap for them. They're going to reject you hand over fist. So God says, okay, fine, do it. Do what you got to do. And he does that, right? Satan is telling us through the narrative what he thinks of us, that we're people who believe we're shallow. He's turned away many people who profess to believe in Jesus with just some difficult life circumstances. He's been doing this all the time, using those things to be like, yeah, I'm going to turn them away from Jesus. He thinks we're shallow. Trump is portraying Jesus in these things, vulgar, all these things. It's just basically people are saying that he's losing his mind. I don't think that's what's happening at all. I think Trump is really telling the MAGA Christians, all people, but particularly the MAGA Christians, what he really thinks of them and their faith. I think this is intentional. He's telling you what he thinks about your faith, MAGA Christians. And he's banking on you to be too tribal to notice it, to be too, you believe him, you put him in office, you believe the things that he says, you believe these things, and so he's just assuming you're going to follow suit. Especially after he attacked the Pope, he's thinking, oh, my Protestant MAGA follower, again, I don't know what he's thinking. I'm going along with the script, right? Let me say that. I don't know what he's thinking. But I'm thinking he's thinking, oh, these people are going to support me anyway. They believe so many lies that I've said They followed my whims. You think Trump doesn't take? Why do you think he takes credit for everything? I'm the best president because there's a 1 John 2, the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the boasting of what he has and does is what it means to love the world. And Trump does all of those things. And there are Christians that defend him saying he's a Christian. They stand up when they look up, and Trump's telling you this is what he really thinks about your faith. I think you support me so much, you don't even care if I look like Jesus in these posts. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Let me give you some political evidence of why I think this way. Why I think this. Because even though Trump's been losing supporters about the Epstein files, do you remember this? When Joe Biden won the election, as many court cases, no one legitimately proved, apart from conservative spin documentaries, that the Democrats stole the election, the 2020 election. No one. Courts, no, and some of these courts were conservative, so we don't find evidence of it. But remember when Joe Biden got in office? I don't know how long it was. Maybe the first year, maybe the first 2 years. Do you remember what one of the primary stories was about? You remember? It was about Hunter Biden's laptop. You remember that? You would see all these pictures of Hunter Biden. They were saying he's a meth head, whatever. He was a drug addict, that he was with female escorts, but it was all about his laptop and getting his laptop. And I'm talking about this went on and on and on and on and on. There wasn't even nothing about Joe Biden. It was just his son. And I thought, why? I just thought, man, it's so pressed to try to create a narrative. And I don't remember exactly how long, but it felt like 2 years. All we heard about was Hunter Biden's laptop and all this stuff, right? You come 2 years later, and then the Epstein files come out, and then Trump's just able to be like, yeah, we're not going to talk about that. That's even though he campaigned on that. Everything, not everything, but there are things that Trump campaigned on that he did not do, that conservative Christians, I'm not talking about just conservative Christians, MAGA Christians or whatever, that they stand by this dude. They don't call him to account. And immediately when you bring something up, they immediately go, oh, so what, you think Joe Biden was? No, but we're just being honest with you. Hunter Biden's laptop took 2 years in the conservative media. It can't hold a candle to 38,000 times being mentioned in the Epstein files. And real graphic FBI interviewed evidence of harm towards younger women that were underage. Trump is telling you what many of us have already said, but because it became so political. Anytime you said something about Trump, it was about political. You were being accused of affirming the other party. It was like, no, I'm calling the truth. This guy's not a believer. I'm not going to say he's a believer just because you do. And so this is what we're saying. Trump is telling the MAGA Christians what he really thinks about Christianity. And now they're realizing it for the first time, where many of us have been calling it out for years. Remember when he had the press conference and had the Bible upside down? And then we were like, bro, just turn the Bible upside down. And then he had this conference. They were like, yeah, give us one of your favorite. I don't want to talk about the Bible. It's really personal. I like both testaments. He probably couldn't quote John 3:16. Maybe he could. Hopefully he could. This is what we're saying. Here's the second thing. Second out of four. Here's what I think we need to pay attention to. Is this. Technology. Here's the second thing. The log and the speck. Let me explain what I mean by this. You know, in Matthew 7, let's go to this passage real quick. Let's just see it for ourselves. All right, let's go to real quick just so we see it. Matthew 7, Jesus says this. Judge not that you not be judged, for with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take out the speck out of your eye when there's a log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your eye, and then you will see clearly the speck, to take the speck out of your brother's eye. That's Matthew 7, one of the most misused and misquoted passages in the world. People say, well, you're not supposed to judge. That's not what Jesus was saying. There's a way that you judge, and there's a methodology, Remember, you have a speck. Take that out, then judge your brother's log. Right? That's what he said. He didn't say your brother doesn't have a log. He didn't have a speck. He didn't say there was nothing in his eye. He said there's something in your eye that's bigger. Right? The log and the speck is what I think the Lord is showing us right now. I don't think God is punishing conservative Christians. I think he's giving them a mirror. He's giving them a mirror. And this is what I mean by that. There was a point where conservatives, MAGA, disagreed with, rightly so, political policy disagreements with the left. 100%. 100%. There were policy disagreements, and that was what it was about. That was what it was about. But then at some point over the last 15 years, because of Black Lives Matter and the rise of these things and just concerns that people had, whether you agree with them or not, it turned from that to real personal character assassination. Now that's always going on, but there was real personal character assassination on the left, assassination. That's why anytime someone Black was shot by police, before, I remember Candace Owens used to say, we need to wait for the facts, don't, but she would already tell you that whatever they said it was not true before the facts came out, right? And then you had other Black Christians would come to the forefront. I forgot those twins, the Hodge twins, and all these people would come out and use these talking points that made it seem like every time someone Black was harmed or shot by police, it was clearly the Black person's fault before the facts came out. And rarely were those statements overturned when facts showed otherwise, right? This is what's happening right now. This is what's happening. There were so much attacks on the other side, on the conservative side, so many attacks towards the left, and no attacks on their own. That now the person you stood behind, the one you defended, is attacking you. He's attacking you. It's attacking you. And here's what's happening. The measure, verse 7:2, right? Let's go back to this real quick. Verse 2. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. This is what's happening. This is what God is doing. MAGA conservative Christians are getting smacked in the face by the world. But you know what? There was a time when God had to do that to the left. He did it to the left. He did it. We'll come back to that. They're getting smacked in the face. And now it's just the chickens have come home to the roost, as Malcolm X would say. The measure they use has been measured against them. It's happening. So much so that people like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Joe Rogan, Alex Jones was just on a podcast talking with the podcast about how to invoke the 25th Amendment and get Trump out of there. Alex Jones, man? You got Megyn Kelly saying MAGA is dead. You got all these people who were made podcasts and supported them. And it's like, oh, you didn't pay attention. Now you're being judged the way you judge the left. The way that the left was being judged, everything they said and did was a problem, no matter what it was. And now it's your turn. You're being judged. The log and the speck. Conservative Christians have had a log in their eye for a long, long time. And all they talked about was the Democrats' left. The left's speck. That's all they talked about. Sleepy Joe Biden, he's sniffing young girls' hair. Remember that? Remember the memes that they showed of Joe Biden smelling girls' hair? At least we could say that the dude may be losing it up here. But I don't remember hearing Joe Biden, Obama, or people's name, maybe Bill Clinton, but I don't remember hearing those Joe Biden, Obama, Kamala Harris. I don't remember hearing their names in the Epstein files. I don't. So you're going to highlight sniffing girls' hair, but not pulling girls' hair in a very derogatory, sinful way. The measure you use is being measured to you, which leads to my third point. These two kind of, third and fourth, kind of overlap, but they're different in their own respect. The third point is this. It's Judah's turn. It's Judah's turn. Let me explain what I mean. I'm going to use the illustration that politics is very tribal, right? That people just stick to their tribe and so forth. And that's it. You can't just very tribal. And I agree with that. I think people will defend and push back. They just stand by their tribe, and that's all that it is, right? So let's take that as an illustration, because many Christians think that the church is the new Israel or whatever, support Israel, but we're the new Israel, all of that, right? I'm going to use this as an illustration. So you had 12 tribes in Israel. There was a northern tribe that had 10. They were the larger tribe. They had 10. And the southern tribe had 2. The southern tribe was clearly more righteous than the northern tribe. There were 40 kings in the northern tribe, and in Israel, the northern tribes, and then 39 kings in the southern tribes. 6 of the kings in the southern kingdom were good kings: Hezekiah, Josiah, men like that. All 40 kings in the north, in the 10 tribes, were all evil kings. And so Assyria came and destroyed them in 722. But then Nebuchadnezzar came in 605 BC or 586 BC. Some say he came in 605 and then went back in 586 to just finish the job, whatever. He came and took Judah, right? Judah and Benjamin. As an illustration, it's Judah's turn. So the left, when all the stuff was happening, let's call the left the northern kingdom. It's the northern kingdom. God humbled the northern kingdom. Black Lives Matter collapsed under its own contradictions. It collapsed. You don't even hear about it anymore. It's almost like, maybe in some circles, but it's almost like all those names, Ibrahim Kendi, Ta-Nehisi Coates, these people are still out there, but man, some of these people were making millions of dollars. What's the girl who wrote White Fragility? I can't remember her name right now. I can see her face with the glasses and the curly brown hair. Can't remember her name. But these names were everywhere, right? And conservatives felt like they're taking over the country. They were outnumbered. I remember at one point Ben Shapiro saying things like, well, we're outnumbered by the left. We only have a few sources. We have Fox, we have Daily Wire, and a few others, but all the media is left. They were the bigger tribe. We're all Americans, but the left was a bigger tribe, and they got decimated. That whole thing broke down. They were arrogant. They were judgmental. They were divisive. That's what they did. They came in yelling at people. You're white privilege, all this stuff. Some things made sense. Some things were just like, you're just bitter. You're offended. You're upset. And these were Christians too, and they were just going at it. Right? They were just going at it. And I remember the conservatives feeling like they're on their heels. Everyone's changing. Everyone's becoming woke. Everything's about black, all this stuff, right? Then the Northern Kingdom got decimated. They got decimated. Shortly after COVID hit, they just got decimated. Black Lives Matter, the women who ran it, the 3 women, they got exposed for being fraud, taking money that was supposed to go to the different chapters across the country and using it to buy mansions, things like that, right? They got decimated. And that was first. In Israel's history, that was 722 BC. God sent the Assyrians and they were decimated. People don't even know what happened to them for the most part. I don't even hear about Black Lives Matter anymore. Remember, that was all you heard. I don't even hear about it anymore. They're just gone, the Northern Kingdom. Well, the more righteous of the two, the Southern Kingdom, they also, because of their sins, they said, God, I'm punishing you too. Don't think the Northern Kingdom, because it took longer to punish you. Yeah, you were more righteous than them. I'm punishing you too. God one day said, Judah, it's your turn. The conservatives, particularly MAGA Christians, are the Judah. You're Judah. And it's your turn. It's your turn. It's your turn. The righteous, the moral high ground, the Hezekiahs and the Josiahs, it's your turn. Now look, now you're being taken into captivity. You're being exposed for who you are. It's just like what God said to Judah. Again, this is an analogy. Don't tell me, don't put in the Pastor Kurt, that's wrong. That's not what, this is an analogy. I'm not saying it's a one-on-one. But the MAGA Christians, Republicans, they're Judah. They thought, hey, we have the more high ground, we have better policies, all of this. It's Judah's turn. Judah is being punished by God for their sins. And this is what I think is happening. When I look at this, I'm like, wow, look at the conservatives. 5-6 years ago, they seemed like they felt like they were Israel walked marching around the walls of Jericho and it fell down, and they celebrated as the left and all the stuff just slowly started to implode and just be. It just seemed like, look, God is with us. See, we told you, God hates woke and God's all this stuff, right? And now look at them. Some of their most high-ranking officials are all turning coat against the movement. Podcasters, influencers. They loved Candace Owens when she had a lot to say about Black people, Black culture, all of that. But boy, did they change on her when she talked about Israel and then went after Erica Kirk. Now, I'm not saying she's wrong or right in any of those things. I don't even pay attention to Candace Owens like that. But I did like the hypocrisy God was exposing, because you had no problem when she was going after Black people. She even said she was encouraged to go after the Black issues. She did it. Now it's Judah's turn. More righteous Judah, better policies, Judah. Now it's your turn. You did not care about Christ and him crucified. You didn't care about the character that God wanted you to have. There were some godly people for sure. There was some stuff, but largely some of these influencers, it was like, wow, they're just crazy right now, talking crazy stuff. I actually pulled back from posting at things because I was like, you know what? I need to be careful, because there's so much to critique that I don't want to come in here guns blazing and just accusation entertainment. That's what it's become, accusation entertainment. Most YouTube channels now, at least to show up on my feed, a lot of them were just, let me entertain you by accusing other people of what they do. It's fascinating. And the accuser of the brethren is the enemy, Satan. It's Judah's turn. They thought they were exempt. They thought they were on God's side, and now you're seeing all this division. You didn't see any of this. And it's different, right? God just decimated Black Lives Matter and sort of that whole movement, right? But you didn't see a lot of infighting in the big, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember influencers on the left with them going at each other. I don't remember this happening. This is insane. Joe Biden didn't turn on the people who support him. This is incredible to watch this stuff happen. And Trump just seemingly doesn't care. But what do I know? Last one is this one. I think the conservatives, MAGA, and this goes to everyone, I think the left did this too. I think they forgot that God judges without partiality. Let me explain what I mean. God is not a registered voter. He's not. Romans 2:11, he judges without partiality. James says that. He judges. He's impartial in his judgment. The left thought that God was co-signing their movement because they loved people more. They cared about the downtrodden, the LGBTQ, the immigrant, the Black, the marginalized people group. And they thought, yeah, God's with us. Look at the movement. Look at all this is happening. Black Lives Matter was all over the world. Painted on the street in front of the White House. There would be like these massive marches across the world. And they thought like, oh man, God's co-signing our movement. But they were misreading his judgment as an endorsement. It's not what happened. It's not what happened. God judges, he's not judging. God is not auditing policies. He's auditing the character of the people who support policies. He's not auditing policies. God's not sitting there looking at, okay, who's the left and the right? As far as we can tell, he's looking at the character of the people that believe in him and how are they acting. Do they love me, or do they love their neighbors? That's what he cares about. You don't get moral high ground from God's perspective because some of your policies are more moral than your political opponents. You don't get pat on the back from God. Let me prove this to you. Or let me tell you why I'm saying this. This might not be proof. But in Matthew chapter 7, I'm going to go there real quick just so we can pull up. I wasn't intending to go there, but I want you to see this. This is where I get my logic from things like this, all right? This is where I get my logic from. Let me show you this passage. You know this well. You've seen this passage plenty of times. You know this passage well. But here's what he says right here. Look at this. This is Matthew 23, all right? Listen to what Jesus says to the Pharisees. He says, verse 23, he says, woe to you scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. Listen to this. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. All right. You see what he's saying? You should have did these without neglecting the other stuff. God is not looking at conservative Christians and thinking, hey, I'm so proud of you. You didn't support the abortion or LGBT rights, or you push back against illegal immigrants. No, God is looking at you saying, were you holy? Did you love people? Did you pray for those people? Did you show partiality? 100%. Politics has turned into favoritism. The left will not critique the left. The right will not critique the right. And God says, I'm not on the left or the right. I expose the deeds of darkness wherever they are. Satan doesn't have, he's not a registered card voter. He's on the left and the right. I just saw there was a popular black gay Republican. I think his name is Rod. Black dude with a little flat top, and he was kind of in the mix for a little bit, and then he just got booted out of it. And I saw a thing on YouTube where he was a gay dude. He was on, looks like a gay cruise, where there were, and he said, these are all gay Republicans and we support Trump. I remembered when Trump was campaigning that they had, I did a video on this, that Melania Trump, and then they supported this, I forgot the name of the organization at the moment, but they were basically, she raised $1 million for their cause, which is they were gay people who supported Trump. Like the left, God isn't looking at it like, oh, you didn't agree with these policies, so do you? No, he's looking at it like, man, you showed favoritism. You would not critique the other side. This is why I love what Candace Owens is doing. Not that I agree with everything she says. I don't even care for the most part. But I appreciate now you're critiquing the other side, your old side. But it's more of a selfish thing, to be honest. It's more about it serves her purpose. But like this is what's happening. As believers, we are supposed to speak to truth, speak truth to life. And we expose the deeds of darkness, whether they're in our own hearts. Sometimes we confess our sins to other people, whether they're in our churches, we expose things, or whether it's in culture. But like what happens is we think we forgot that God judges without partiality. You know, in 2 Corinthians 5, 9, and 10, these are two passages that stay in the front of my mind, because I think if all Christians try to live out just these two verses, one verse and then and the reason why, I think the world, Christians in America would be profoundly in a better place, right? It's just two. I'm actually going to pull them up. I'm pulling up all these verses I wasn't intended to. I just feel like showing you instead of just quoting it, because I can quote it. Then it looks like, oh, you just quoted, you show off. Listen to these two. I want you to see this on the screen. Look at this. Here's what God says. These are two verses to live by. If you're a believer, if you can live by these two verses, if you do, oh my gosh, listen to what he says here. He says this, verse 9. So whether we are at home or away, we make it our aim to please him. That's what he says we do. Just imagine if you thought like, man, how can I please the Lord? Not we make it our aim to push back against the left or the right or their policies or defend babies in the womb, or we make it our aim to please him. Now, maybe you think that does please him, but if you're angry and bitter and judgmental and accusatory of other people, that doesn't please him. It doesn't matter what your policies are, right? You should have done both of those. You should have been able, as he said, you should have been able to keep those policies in check, say, this is what I believe, and still love these people. You should have been able to point out the racism that you saw in the right and still love them and pray for them. But no, it became the character became connected to the political side, the theological side. So now the character says, you can't, they're your enemies, you got to destroy them. But he says this, we make it our home, we make it our aim to please him. Then he says in verse 10, here's why. For we must all appear before the judgment seat. Listen to this. We must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive what is due for what he has done in the body, whether good or evil. You see that's partiality language, non-partial. You're going to get what was done in the body, whether good or evil. It's partial language. James 2 talks about this significantly. James 2, I'm not going to pull it up, but James 2 just says, look, God he's impartial. I think people, both left and right, but I'm focusing on conservatives because they're the ones eating crow right now. They thought that God judged partially. They thought he judged politically instead of impartially. He judges without favoritism. But they thought, hey, we're the policy people. We're the ones closest to God. We have the moral high ground. And God's saying you don't have the moral high ground because you have policies that may be more moral. You have the moral high ground if you submit to the one who was the most moral that was raised off the. That's the only moral high ground that exists, is the cross. The cross is the only moral high ground. And if you are not believing in and really striving to obey that moral high ground, then you don't have any. You don't have any apart from that. And this is the problem. You don't have any moral high ground. The cross is the only moral high ground. You don't have any. So you can't just profess to believe. You got to strive to believe. This is what's happening. This is what I'm seeing happening. It's really fascinating. It's just different. It's just all favoritism. Remember when we used to vote for politicians that we thought that campaigned on, I can work on both sides of the aisle. They used to call it bipartisan, right? Bipartisan means I'll work with both sides. If I'm a Democrat, I'm going to work with the Republicans to do what's best for the American people. And now, it's like I'm going to pick people in there that will destroy the opposing political party. And we're just walking right with it. And it's just this favoritism and partiality. And God said, I'm not having it. God loves MAGA Christians. He loves conservative believers who trust in him too much to let them think that his decimation of the left is affirming their favoritism on the right. So right now, this is for you. He's reminding you, I judge without partiality. I'm judging holiness, not policies. I'm judging personal character, not policies. And I just think God is not going to be put in a political box. And so what are we seeing happen? This strong delusion is happening. It's fascinating to watch it. There's a lot more that could be said, but I'm not going to hold you. I promised you a video. That was my bad yesterday. I got a couple more coming, but listen, whether you agree or disagree, I don't really care about that. If you like and subscribe, I would love you to. If you don't, no harm, no foul. If you are a believer, the war that you're fighting right now is not flesh and blood. Here's the deeper war you're fighting if you're a believer. You're fighting the war, Matthew 24, 12, and 13. You're fighting a war that as lawlessness has increased, the love of many grows cold. You're fighting living a loveless Christian life because you're struggling with all that you're seeing happening in the culture. And Jesus said in verse 13, but he who endures to the end will be saved. You're saved, but also being saved. So let me give you a suggestion. If you need to, take a break give your digital nervous system a break, or only watch things that you know are going to be balanced enough to help you. Because you watch too much of one thing, you start to develop their mentality, their perspective, their morality. But more than that, try to pray for people that you know that you disagree with politically. I try to pray for Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, just different people, Biden, even people who are not in office. I try to pray for them, if for no other reason, because I want to make sure that I'm not growing colder in my love. That stuff I'm going to be judged by. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be judged by if I voted red or blue. I'm going to be judged by how much did the blood red of Christ influence the way I did things. And that may affect who I'd vote for on certain things, whatever. That's fine. But ultimately, your vote does not make you mature. Your humility does. Your submission to God does. Your obedience and imitation of God is what makes you mature, not who you voted for, your policies. So anyway, this is what I'm seeing. Are you seeing what I'm saying? Hope so. Appreciate you. Like and subscribe. Share the video. Let's bring common sense back. Right? Let's make common sense great again. Let's make biblical common sense great again. Grace and peace, y'all. See you soon.